everybody and welcome back to the channel. If you're new, you're really welcome. Nice to see you. Come on in. My name is Jane. My husband Mike is behind the camera. We're British, early retirees, debt and mortgage free, and living a thrifty, frugal and money-saving life on a super tight budget here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Friday we invite you into our kitchen. And normally we cook something for you, but we're not cooking this week. But we're going to share with you some really good tips for saving money every time you cook. Many of the skills I'm going to share with you today I learnt from my mum, and my mum is now in her mid-80s. And she was born in 1939 and she was a child in wartime, and then she lived through rationing after the war. And those householders and housekeepers and housewives at that time, they really didn't have much money and they had to stretch food as far as they could. And then growing up, as I was a child in the 1970s, again there was not a lot of money and we really had to make things do in the kitchen. So everything I'm going to be sharing with you today comes from real life experience. Let's get started. Let's start by talking about affordable meal planning, because everyone says, oh, you need to plan your meals. Well, our grandmothers, our mothers, and I knew with my kids growing up and a very limited amount of money, I had to meal plan, first of all, with the amount of money that I had. And that meant I only ever bought and cooked food I knew my family would eat and my family could eat. Because I know people think that food intolerances are new. They've always existed. There's always been something. So when you are meal planning, this is not the time when times are tight to start experimenting. It means if you're going to buy your food that people will eat. And also you need to think about your time. I mean, I'm retired. I can cook every single meal from scratch. You could be working 7 days a week. You need to just grab food that can be really quickly cooked. Shoved under the grill or popped in some boiling water or popped in the microwave. So think about your individual circumstances, and our mothers knew that, our grandmothers knew that, I knew that, is to meal plan for the family. So what will they eat? What can you afford? And how much time have you got? Our grandmothers, my mother, I knew as a mother, we've all known how to cope with fussy eaters. I am not talking here about food intolerances or food sensitivities. Food intolerances and food sensitivities are very real. There are foods that cause people to have gluey ears, constant phlegm, thick runny noses, gassy bellies, a gassy stinky backside, a gassy runny backside. It will cause people to have inflammation and pain and skin breakouts and real problems. Those are very, very real. They have always existed. They are not new. And people knew how to eliminate things from their diet that caused it or to eat other things. I'm talking about fussy eaters. We've all had fussy eaters in our families. There was a fussy eater in my family. There was a fussy eater in my own personal family, and there are fussy eaters that I know. And what our grandmothers taught us, what my mother taught me, and something that I've did, is sometimes you need to hide certain foods. And that means if you're going to make soups, you might blend them. You've just got the taste of the whole soup. Nobody knows there's pumpkin in there, and a certain member of the family really won't eat pumpkin. There are things and ways of hiding things. So I know full well some kids will love a bolognese sauce or a tomatoey sauce, and we hide everything in there. So blending soups. Another way, if you've got a casserole and certain members of your family will pick out the meat, for example, take a slotted spoon, put that meat to one side, and get all the rest of whatever's in there and use your blending stick and blend it down and pop the meat back in and serve it to them that way. They will never know. Don't do it in front of them. Call them in afterwards once you've plated it up. Call them, leave it. Yeah, I'm fine in here, I'm fine in here. They won't know what's going on. Fussy eaters as well when it comes to brands. Never keep anything in the packets. My mother taught me that one. Never keep anything in the packets. Back in the days, everything went in a Tupperware pot, didn't it? You didn't know what brand of cereals you were eating. You didn't know what brand of rice cereals you were eating. You didn't know what brand of ketchup you were eating because it went in that orange plastic squeezy tomato. Nobody knew. So you do need to start hiding things. Get canny, get a bit clever. They are never going to know. And there's proof of this. When they have done blind testing with products, people couldn't tell one product from another. Like I said, hide it from people. Some people you can't get them to eat fruit, but they'll eat an ice lolly. They'll eat an ice pole. So we can start doing things like getting the fruit out the freezer bag. It's cheaper than fresh fruit. Blending it. Sometimes there are little pips and things in there. People don't like it. Use the sieve method. Use the back of a spoon to push it through the sieve so you don't have any skin or lumps, but they're still getting it there. It would be better if they ate skin and pips and peels. We all know that. But we all have to find a way of cheaply and affordably getting certain foods and certain vegetables down the throats of our family members who can be fussy eaters. So get a bit clever, like our grandmothers did. Start hiding those things in the food. They'll never know. Our grandmothers certainly knew how to bulk out a meal. They knew they had to fill up that plate at meal times because there was nothing else to eat until the next meal. There weren't the snacks, there wasn't the food to be saying to people you can just graze and pick up what you like. So they knew how to bulk out a plate. And that is what we all need to return to doing now. Food is so expensive. Greatest thing that we can do at the moment is anything that goes with mashed potatoes. And you can add things to mashed potatoes. If you are British, you will know you can cook potatoes and parsnips together and mash them. Potatoes, parsnips, swede and carrots and mash them. Potatoes, carrots, swede, cauliflower and parsnips. Cook them all together, mash them all up. Any root vegetables, including celeriac, and then mash it and add it to the top of something. And like I said about the fussy eaters, they won't know they're eating it. Add a bit of butter to it. If you really want to disguise it, add a bit of ketchup to it. People love ketchup, don't they? It sweetens it too and it bulks it out. If you are going to make a pasta sauce, anything from celery, carrots, onion, parsnips, swede, any summer produce from summer squash, courgettes, zucchini, anything like that, the food processor is your friend. Chop it up into chunks of about an inch in size, stick it in there so it all comes out like breadcrumbs. It will save you money. And our grandmothers knew as well about saving money in the kitchen. The smaller you make your chunks, the quicker it will cook, the less energy it will take. That and a tin of tomatoes and cook it down well, stick that over pasta. You can have your 5 a day just in your pasta sauce, just on your pasta, and people will never ever know. In the same way that our grandmothers knew, you add lentils to everything, you add beans to everything. A really, really good old-fashioned French stew has got as many beans in it as it's got meat in it, the traditional cassoulet. So people really knew how to stretch out their meals with cheap vegetables. Our grandmothers knew there was absolutely nothing wrong with plain home cooking. In fact, I can remember it well, a phrase that was used commonly when I was younger, commonly with my mother, that I am a plain cook. And if you were hiring people, you could ask for a plain cook. And that meant somebody who knew how to make regular meals. And I think there's so many of those things from our plain cooking past that have a great place on our economic kitchen table today. Let's just think about things like mashed potatoes. How easy is it to peel our potatoes, lightly cook them in boiling water until they are soft, and we knew to cut them up into very small pieces to save on energy, and then simply drain them, leave them draining so we get the steam off them as well, season it well, add some butter or milk, mash it, and it elevates any meal with really good proper home cooked potatoes. Baked potatoes, every time your oven is on, take your potatoes, make sure that you've washed them, dried them, oiled them and salted them. Oil them by rubbing the oil on your hands and rubbing them on your potatoes and then salting them and baking them so they have that beautiful crispy skin. Another thing that elevates any meal, even if it's just sausages, are roasted potatoes. And if you have a mini oven, this is a really cheap way of doing this. Those of us who have a wood oven, it's a really cheap way of doing it. Par cook your potatoes, drain them until all the steam comes off them, and then rough them up. Now you put them in a saucepan and you shake it. You add your oil to it and shake it. You add your salt and you shake it, and you put it on a baking tray in a piping hot oven at 180 to 200 centigrade, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, when you have your oven on anyway. It's a simple way, instead of doing chips and putting the fryer on and costing you all that money in oil. Never ever underestimate the nutritional value of simple steamed vegetables. Steam them or lightly cook them in boiling salted water. And all of these things are packed with nutrients and on your plate and well cooked. Things from cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, leeks and carrots. All of those. And with cabbage, very finely shredded. So you can have that with a pasta sauce, like a tomato sauce. And toss your cabbage once you've cooked it in a little bit of butter. Salt it well, but don't over salt it. And they are massive. You won't need to take extra multivitamins if you've got these in your diet. Plain home cooking and the simplest of ingredients. One thing our grandmothers knew about, they passed it down to my mother and they passed it down to me, and I'm passing this on as well, is really good, cheap nutrition. Some of the very best meat you can eat is organ meat, but some of the healthiest meat you can eat is liver. And if you're turning your nose up at it and you're saying, no, I wouldn't eat this and I wouldn't eat that, you've had a lovely life and you've never known hardship, and good for you. But it is an excellent meat if you know how to cook it well. Pan fried very, very lightly in a bit of butter or dripping, and I mean very lightly. Adding in your cooked, very finely sliced onions and some bacon in there as well, or cooking it in bacon grease. Making a nice gravy with some stock and some corn flour and thickening it up. Serving that with some steamed buttery greens and mashed potatoes is one of the cheapest, best nutritious meals that you can get, bursting with goodness. Our mothers, our grandmothers, they all knew the benefits of those cheap tins of oily fish. Fresh sardines, expensive. Tinned sardines and tinned pilchards, and pilchards are just bigger sardines. Really, really nutritious. Many a meal we had growing up was a piece of toast with mashed up sardines or mashed up pilchards in tomato sauce on top of it. Put back under the grill, and when we talk about a grill, the grill has the heat over So we put it under the grill and maybe sprinkle with a bit of vinegar and black pepper. It was a superb meal having that and getting all that goodness from that oily fish. It was a Sunday tea time treat. It was a meal on a weekday evening. So tinned fish. Tinned salmon is still cheaper than fresh salmon, and you get all that goodness from it. Tinned mackerel as well. Mackerel is a cheap fish if you can get hold of it, but we often eat here tinned mackerel. We eat it with salad. You can hide, this is something else. You can hide this from people who go, not keen on fish, or I wouldn't eat this. Mash it into mashed potato, make it into little fish cakes, lightly fry it, stick some ketchup with it or tomato sauce with it. It is a really, and our grandmothers knew this. We pass this on as well, of getting that really good nutrition very, very cheaply. Our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our people before us, all of them, they all knew about cuts of meat. And this was very much passed down to me. And it's still something that I use as a skill to save money in my kitchen now. If you want to pay a lot of money for chicken, buy skinless, boneless chicken breasts. If you want to save money, you buy either your whole chicken, or you're buying chicken thighs or chicken drumsticks, or the thigh and the drumstick together. Or you're buying your chicken breast with the skin on and the bone still underneath it. If you're buying lamb and you buy a boned and rolled joint of lamb, you will pay a lot of money for it. If you buy it still on the bone, you'll pay less for it. So think of those cuts of meat. Now, the cheapest piece of meat that we had, the way to buy meat that I remember my mother buying, she would buy a 4/4 of beef. That's the shoulder, the front leg, the shin, the breastplate of the animal, anything from around the neck. So all of those pieces of meat were cheaper, and it is exactly the same if you're buying beef, you're buying pork, or you're buying lamb. If you're buying neck of breast of lamb, anything of that, of the bottom of the ribs onto the belly, you're getting into the fattier cuts of meat. But they are so often, and chefs know this, and it is a trade secret, they are the absolute tastiest. We all know the best beef is going to be shin of beef, and you are going to cook it until it melts. We've got slow cookers. We're not like our poor mothers and grandmothers trying to keep a range going and ticking it over and shutting down the air, or keeping a stew pot going. We've got slow cookers, so we can cook it really slowly. We all know those rib of beef. Now, when you think of rib of beef, you're thinking of the top of the rib, which is going onto the spine, and those big joints of meat. We're talking about the bottom of it, the fattier pieces here. And it's often got the meat, the short bit of the rib bone, and the big chunk of fat on it. If you are worried about fat, those of us who cook know fat is flavour. That fat renders down. You can use that fat, and there's a real trick that our grandmothers knew. My mother taught me this one too. It's to cook something twice. So we would put our meat, our breast of lamb, our belly pork, our rib of beef, not the rib of beef like that's rib of beef that's got the T-bone on it, the steak on it, but the bottom cheaper parts of it. Cook it twice. Let it go cold. The fat will all come to the top. Skim the fat off that our grandmothers kept for frying and roasting. And then you can cook that again either in a bit of stock to make a gravy or in a sauce. So take your time to learn about cheaper cuts. Learn how to use shoulder of. We all know about oxtail and ox shin. We all know about cheek. We all know about cheek, and it's some of the best meat that you can get. So learn about your cheaper cuts of meat. Learn ways to use them. If you don't know how, you're watching YouTube right now. In the search bar, you can get in there and you can get classes on this as well. But the same as our grandmothers, who passed it down to my mother, who passed it down to me, is knowing your cheap cuts of meat and how to cook them. Now, something our grandmothers passed down and my mother passed down to me and I've passed on to my kids as well is a basic repertoire of cooking skills. And once you've learnt them, you can transfer them, can't you? So if you know how to make pastry, and there's a very simple way to make pastry, it's half fat to flour. And it needs to be a hard fat to flour. And that's it. You're either adding salt or you're adding sugar to make it a sweet pastry or a savoury pastry. So if you can make pastry, you can make pasties, you can make pies. If you can make pies, you can make a meat pie. You can make leftovers, you can take any fruit. You can make a fruit pie, you can make a flan, you can make a tart. Can you make a casserole? A casserole is basically something that has been slow cooked, either in a dish with a lid in the oven or in a slow cooker. It usually has some kind of gravy to go with it. It's usually some form of a stew that's been cooked in a device other than a saucepan. Can you make a chicken stew? Can you make a pork stew? Can you make a slow roast? Can you make soup? And once you've learned how to make one soup, you can make any soup. You've sauteed something down, whether it's celery, carrots, and onion. You've added in something else to it, whether it's meat or whether it's lentils. You've added stock to it, you've cooked it down. You've either left it chunky or you've blended it. Can you make a sauce? Can you make a white sauce? Can you make a cheese sauce? Can you make a sweet sauce? Can you make a chocolate sauce? Basic things. And then you transfer them. Eggs. Do you know how to cook eggs? Can you boil an egg? Can you fry an egg? Can you poach an egg? Can you make an omelette? Can you make an egg custard? Can you make a quiche? Basic skills. Can you make bread? These days, we don't even need to make bread. We just stick it in our bread machine that you can get quite easily from a thrift store. Can you make a basic cake, a sponge cake, a fruit cake? Can you make a basic biscuit or a flapjack or some cookies? And if you don't know how to make any of these, you know how to use YouTube. And all you need to do again is put into the search bar. Say for example you want to make chocolate chip cookies but you don't know how. All you do is you write in there how to make chocolate chip cookies, how to make a steak and kidney pie, how to make a beef stew and dumplings, and the world will teach you how to do it. Our grandmothers knew because they had it written down in a book. So this modern mother can tell you there's certain ways that you can go out and find to do that, to have what our grandmothers would call a basic repertoire of cooking skills. There are so many more money-saving skills about food and the kitchen that I could share with you, and I could go on all day. But this is where you get your chance to join in. What frugal money-saving skills about food and about cooking did you learn from your grandmother or were passed down to your mother and your mother has passed them down to you? We've got a lovely sharing community here. We read all your comments and we know lots of you love to read the comments too. So come on, join in and leave a comment below. Thank you so much to everybody who watches our videos. Thank you to all the subscribers. We are creeping closer and closer to that 25,000 subscribers. And we know about 40% of you watching are not subscribers. So go on, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. Just leaves me to say on behalf of Mike and myself, we'll see you again soon and bye for now.